notre 51e conversation céramique, eh bien, en partenariat avec l'HEC UK Art Club de Londres, représenté ce soir par Joëlle Deroy, eh bien, nous avons la chance d'accueillir Liudmyla Kravchenko.
So this evening, for our 51st ceramic conversation in partnership with HEC UK Art, which I have the pleasure to represent tonight, we are very lucky to welcome tonight Liudmyla Kravchenko.
Alors, notre intervenante de nationalité ukrainienne est conservatrice des collections de porcelaine au Bodam et Varvara Khanenko National Museum of Art, donc de Kiev. Et Liudmyla prépare également une thèse à la National Academy of Culture and Arts Management of Ukraine et à l'école du Louvre.
Our speaker tonight, of Ukrainian nationality, is curator of the porcelain collections at the Bodan and Varvara Khanenko National Museum of Art in Kiev. Liudmyla is also preparing a thesis at the National Academy of Culture and Arts Management of Ukraine and at the École de Louvre.
Alors, l'intérêt pour les collections d'art s'est intensifié en Ukraine, donc au tournant des 19e et 20e siècles. Nobles et intellectuels étaient naturellement amateurs d'art, mais pendant cette période, eh bien, de nouveaux collectionneurs, donc rassemblant méthodiquement, et on va dire professionnellement, des œuvres d'art, donc ils apparaissent dans les plus grandes villes du pays. Et après la révolution de 1917, presque tous ces collectionneurs ont été conduits à quitter le pays et beaucoup se sont établis à Paris.
Interest in art collections intensified in Ukraine at the turn of the 19th and the 20th century. Aristocrats and intellectuals were naturally art lovers, but during this period, new collectors methodically and professionally started collecting works of art, and they appeared in the country's largest cities. After the revolution of 1917, almost all of these collectors were forced to leave the country, and many settled in Paris.
Alors, la conférence de ce soir évoquera donc le sort de ces collections et de leurs propriétaires réfugiés.
This evening's conference will discuss the fate of these collectors and, of these collections, together with their refugee owners.
Alors, en ces temps à nouveau troublés, nous avons une pensée pour la famille de notre intervenante et plus généralement pour tous les Ukrainiens dans la tourmente. Merci infiniment à Liudmyla pour son temps. Merci pour son énergie, pour son enthousiasme et qu'elle va nous faire partager ce soir.
This evening conference, tonight with Liudmyla, and in these once again troubled times, we have a thought for the family of our speaker and more generally for all Ukrainians in turmoil. Thank you so much to Liudmyla for her time, her energy, her enthusiasm that she's sharing with us tonight.
Alors à vous, Liudmyla, et merci.
I'm truly honored to have the opportunity to share the stories of Ukrainian collectors and their fates. In our unstable political times, it's important to recall the consequences of wars and cruelty of totalitarian regimes. Even today, as 100 years ago, political refugees, not only from Ukraine, of course, can emigrate. Yet, my report serves an example of the price that sometimes has to be paid. How one can have everything, aspire for the best for their country, and in the end lose it all. Just as it was a century ago, Europe today provides support to immigrants, my compatriots, but not everyone has managed to find their footing after such cataclysm. Knowing this story, I constantly find myself asking, what will happen back home? I will continue about nowadays, and it's really Europe today provides support for immigrants as it was 1 century ago. But we have to know that not everyone has managed to find their footings after such cataclysm. So that's why I'm asking myself every time what it could be later. we have to learn something from the history. But today we are speaking about Ukrainian porcelain collectors. And yes, I'm a curator of this collection in Khanenko Museum, and for over many years of my work, I habituated to said fact that a third of the porcelain collection is of unknown origin. Just 3 years ago, the third of the porcelain collection was recorded in the museum inventory book as lacking provenance. The subject of my thesis in École de Louvre is the history of formation of this collection, and I became captivated by this subject when I began researching the provenance of different parts of this collection. And throughout my work, I realized how it's difficult to find out the provenance of different parts. And these challenges are related to the fact that the museum was organized shortly after the Russian Revolution of 1917. And it was such a time when private collections were nationalized, and this process took place across all of the Ukraine and indeed across all the territories affected by Bolshevik actions. Soviet authorities seized all the values, placing them in so-called museum funds. And they began establishing numerous museums after, dividing the nationalized collections thematically. For example, European art would go to one museum, Ukrainian art to another, and folk arts to a third. As a result, the private collections were intermixed not only within cities, but across the entire country. It's not just Ukraine, it's also Russia and other countries. And I found one paper, one report of one Soviet museum historian of 1920. He was like expert, Mashkovtsev, and he wrote, "We must not to preserve art collections in the forms in which they existed before the revolution. We must agree not to consider these forms as some kind of relics saved by revolution. We must say to ourselves that regrouping of artistic values is the great benefit for art." It was the beginning in 20s, such a politics of Soviet power. And today we have task for curators for many museums to research the histories of our collections and to restore the names of their previous owners. These names were intentionally forgotten because naturally every collector was regarded an enemy for revolution. The situation in Ukrainian noble families is even more complex. The Soviet regime fought not only against the nobility, but also against Ukrainian history, which had to be revised, rewritten, and ideally have many names forgotten. Those who could not be forgotten had to be presented in a different light, in a way that was useful for a new ideology. But you have to know that in Ukraine, the first art collectors began to form as early as 16th century under the Ostrowski princes. The accumulation of cultural values along with the patronage and support of cultural centers provided by Konstantin Vasily Ostrowski, which influenced the state level. And the development of the collecting was shaped by tastes influenced by the countries governing Ukrainian territories at the different times. During the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, Western taste dominated. Essential and dynastic collections, more primarily the portraits, appeared in Ukraine in 17th century. And there are collections like Radzivil's, Pototsky, Vishnevetsky, organizing from numerous noble estates of right bank of Ukraine. And in 18th and 19th centuries, the trend of collecting was a part and inspired of powers of the world. Among those collectors were also individuals from Ukrainian descent, such as the Razumovsky and Bezborodko families, nobles in Russia, but they were Ukrainians. While traveling, for example, Razumovsky searched for art objects, and he has been in touch with artists. He followed the advices from Shuvalov, an advisor of royalty and founder of the first Academy of Arts in Russia. Razumovsky's collection contained several hundreds of artworks by Italian, French, Flemish, German, and Russian artists of 16th, 18th centuries. Part of this collection passed to his granddaughter, Varvara Rybnina Volkonskaya. Following the revolution, some of these works made their way to Ukrainian state museums, and notable pieces are now preserved in Khanenko Museum. I'll tell you about this collection later. And after Napoleonic Wars, Ukrainians turned their attention to their own history. Many Ukrainian nobles, after studying and serving abroad, returned to their ancient estates in Ukraine, supporting culture and education, thereby forming cultural centers in their manners. So today I want to tell you about late of 19th century. In the middle of 19th century to early 20th century, the new type of collector appeared, contained of businessmen, industrialists, and traders. With their commercial insight, they quickly accumulated wealth, supporting their children to receive exceptional educations. These families then invested their wealth and knowledge into the development of their towns, making charity a way of life. They traveled, accepted other cultures, dedicated significant resources to building their collections. Moreover, each of these families supported education and artists, making art and learning increasingly accessible for different segments of society. Thanks to these people, that Ukraine has numerous museums today. And today I will discuss a few prominent names, including Tereshchenko, Khanenko, Repnin, Gudimlevkovich, and others. My focus will be on those directly connected to Kiev, but let me assure you that this will not be full-scale. Almost every city in Ukraine has some legacy of patrons and collectors of art and antiquities. On this photo, you see a view of Kiev in early 70s of 19th century. Within a decade, this place would change beyond recognition. And new buildings were constructed here, which are now our architectural landmarks. Many of them today are museums. And it must be acknowledged that over these 100 years, not everything has been preserved. So you can see the difference between that photo of the Kiev, such a modest city, and in the beginning, in the late 19th century, in the beginning of 12th century, you could see such buildings that were built by our collectors. And so this is our museum street, because we have 3 museums on this street, Tereshchenkivska, and this park. So you see the contemporary image of this part of Kiev, a big change. On this point, I want to tell you a few words about our art dealers. After analyzing advertisement from Kiev of the second half of the 19th century, as well as reviewing the memories of contemporaries and historians who studied the art market during this period, it's clear that the antique trade in Kiev developed much later in 19th century. The Bogdan Khanenko recalled, Kiev in early times offered very few sources for acquiring art. Local antique dealers like Ilchitsky, Shakhnovsky, Moshko, and Bogdanov mostly dealt with silverware, various small items, with paintings appearing rarely and often in very poor condition. And later, Zolotnitsky family arrived from Nizhyn. With the establishment of Zolotnitsky family antique trade, who came from Nizhyn after collecting a rich collection of gold snuff boxes, antique silver, bronze, porcelain paintings, over 40 years, a new era began in Kiev for art lovers. Zolotnitsky's business model differed considerably from that of other dealers who tried to acquire valuable items for a small matter and then resell them in high price. Upon this arrival in Kiev, Zolotnitsky, an expert who had visited numerous European museums, effectively ended this practice, and with his deep knowledge, he could accurately evaluate the value of each high-quality item. This approach earned him a vast client base not only in Kiev but also in other capitals of Russia and even abroad, where he made every year spring visits. In 1920, following the revolution of 1917, the gallery of Zolotnitsky moved to Paris and established there. It was reopened by Yakov Zolotnitsky, the founder's grandson, and his nephew Lev Greenberg. Initially, the gallery was named Zolotnitsky, after its founder. The name à la Vieille Russie was adopted later and remained unchanged, and today it's a world-renowned gallery that located in New York before Second World War. And it's only fitting to begin this story of significant collectors and patrons of art with the Tereshchenko family. The Tereshchenko family from Gluchiv is well known in Ukraine, and as major landowners and successful industrialists, they left a substantial legacy in history. The Tereshchenko family has an incredible history. As early at the beginning of 19th century, Artemy Tereshchenko was engaged in a small-scale trade while living in a town of Gluchiv. Over time, he shifted to grain trading, and after earning enough, he invested their sugar industry. By the 70s of 19th century, Tereshchenko family owned about 10 sugar factories. Their diverse activity in the agricultural and industrial sectors allowed them, unlike most other landowners, to manage their wealth effectively and to continue expanding their fortune. In 70s, members of the Tereshchenko family moved to Kiev, marking the beginning of their tradition of collecting and charitable work. The majority of the Tereshchenko family went toward a charity. Artemy Tereshchenko instructed his sons to dedicate 80% of their profits to community needs. Researchers estimate that Nicola Tereshchenko alone donated around 5 million rubles to charity, with nearly half of that amount spent on development of Kiev. In 1974, Nicola Tereshchenko moved to Kiev and settled on Bibikov Boulevard. Now, this building that you see on the photo is the National Museum of Taras Shevchenko. Here, Nicola Tereshchenko displayed his art collection, which he had started in Gluchiv. His brothers and sisters and children also became collectors, including his brother Fedor, Ivan, Alexander, daughters Varvara and Olga. Today, the Tereshchenko collection is housed across 4 museums: the National Museum of Taras Shevchenko, National Art Museum, Kiev Art Gallery, and Khanenko Museum. During Nicola Tereshenko's lifetime, his art collection was not hidden from the public, and in March of 77, he exhibited his paintings for the first time in the gallery to raise funds for Murashko Drawing School. Other prominent collectors from Kiev, such as Gudim Levkovich and Tarnovsky, also participated in this exhibition, and these events became regular and generated around 1,000 ruble for a school for a year. His brother, Fedor Tereshenko, he's really overrun his brother, creating one of the finest art galleries in Ukraine and in Russia. He even built a special house that you see here, this one, a special house for his collection at the Alexeyevska Street, where he lived. The primary source for new additions to his gallery was the auction exhibitions held in Kiev from 1872. The Tereshenko family, Nicola and Fedor, and later Ivan, became rivals for renowned Moscow collector Tretyakov. In 1883, Tretyakov wrote to the artist Repnin, saying, "The Tereshenko gentlemen are strong competitors. I'm, however, glad that they are acquire something. It seems they will follow in my footsteps." Such opinion. And Fedor opened his gallery for public viewing, attracting up to 1 visitors in certain day. It's enough for their times. After his death, his children did not continue to manage the collection, but his niece Olga, who lived in her uncle's house, occasionally edited. Records shows in archives receipts for paintings and porcelain she purchased in 1911-1912. And another collector from this family, Ivan Nikolaevich Tereshenko, he was son of Nicola Tereshenko, I showed you. He was also a well-known art collector. And this collection housed in his residence on Bibikov Boulevard. You see this building I'm showing you. That was constructed in 1874. It's a small Venetian palace and served a valuable art collection, which including different selection of paintings, drawings, and decorative arts. After his death, the collection passed to his wife and his son Mikhail, who continued to expand it. They continued in 1913. Yelizaveta bought drawings by Rubel on the exhibition organized by a new society of artists in St. Petersburg. On this photo, I want to show you the family and friends in this house of Tereshenko. Here you can see. I'm sorry, why I can't show you. Just tell me if you see something I'm showing you.
Yes, we can see it. Thank you, Lud.
Great, I'm sorry. You can see old Nicola Tereshenko, and here, this young gentleman is Mikhail Tereshenko, the last owner of 2 buildings of this family on Bibikov Boulevard, and the last owner of this great collection. It's just one photo from that time so I have with a little display of a porcelain collection. I'm sorry, not too much that I found from archives. On this point, I want to continue about dramatic events for the Tereshenko art collection. In the next years, this collection faced such events like revolution. In December of 1917, the building on the Bibikov Boulevard was taken for the needs of General Secretary of Transportation. This situation raised significant worries among members of Society of the Study of Arts regarding the fate of the collection, and Professor Sergei Gilarov inspected the house, and they reported that the situation of the collection is in danger. All artworks were carelessly packed in attics and bathrooms. Paintings were removed from their frames and stored in unheated rooms, while valuable art books were abandoned again into the bathrooms. Requests for a dedicated room for a staff member to oversee the fate of the collection were denied. But this was only the beginning of the tragedy. Exactly 1 month later, in January 1918, Kiev was rocked by artillery bombardments from Bolshevik forces, and art historian Fyodor Ernst recounted the events. During those days, when Bolsheviks seized Kiev, a significant part of Mikhail Tereshchenko collection, housed in the home of his father on Bibikov Boulevard, was destroyed. Many paintings were simply cut from their frames with knives. And this photo is from the report of this art historian, Fyodor Ernst. It's not really, I'm not sure it's a collection of Bogdan Tereshchenko, but you see how the volumes were preserved in the yard of one building. And later, what remained of the collection and what had not been transported in Petrograd was reunited with a further collection in Kiev Museum of Russian Art. At the beginning, it was Kiev Art Gallery. During the Soviet times, it was Kiev Museum of Russian Art. And now, again, we have a National Museum Kiev Art Gallery. It was in that building, in this building, and now it stays in this building. And on these photos, I want to show you the last owner of this collection, Mikhail Tereshchenko. It's a really very strong person who was a minister of finance under the Kerensky government, who was arrested, and just thanks to his wife, Margaret Noer, she was a French lady, she helped Mikhail Tereshchenko to be free. They paid by their they paid everything. They gave everything they had just to get freedom from Mikhail Tereshchenko. And this young family arrived in Europe. I can't say poor, but they had nothing. And just after several years, Mikhail Tereshchenko started to work for different European banks, even with the Rothschild bank. He continued his career, and he restarted his life really successfully. But after all, we lost the collection of Tereshchenko family. Still, in this museum, Kiev Art Gallery, they have a huge collection of Russian porcelain, and it's really volumes. But I can't tell you that it's really from. It could be from the Tereshchenko collection, but I can say from which one, Fedir, Ivan, or Nikola Tereshchenko. And maybe my favorite or not, I don't know. It's Bogdan Khanenko, and founder of our museum. And the history of this collection begins more than 100 years ago. Bogdan Khanenko was born in Ukrainian noble family in Chernigiv region, and after graduating from the Moscow University, he settled in St. Petersburg and began practicing law. There, in 1871, the young lawyer met Georgy Druzhinin, a collector of paintings and porcelain. As a result of looking closely at Druzhinin's collection, Bogdan Khanenko became interested in art. Once he had discovered this new passion, he quickly made contact with other collectors and art dealers in St. Petersburg. His wife, Varvara Khanenko, daughter of Liudmyla Kravchenko, after marrying in 1874, Bogdan and Varvara went on a trip in Europe. Along the way, they visited art galleries and museums in Rome, Naples, Florence, Vienna, and other cities. And during this trip, Khanenko made their first part of the collection. Returning to St. Petersburg, Bogdan Khanenko devoted himself to the study of art history and began assembling his library. In his narrative on initiation of his collection, Bogdan Khanenko places on the approximate the market in St. Petersburg. And in the end of 19th century, there were numerous antique shops. And residing nearby, Bogdan Khanenko explored the dealerships and made his first art acquisitions. It was at approximate yard that young enthusiast bought his first pieces of Meissen porcelain. Bogdan Khanenko left St. Petersburg when he was appointed in Warsaw to the post of member of district court in 1876. Here he had continued collecting for about 5 years. It was a significant part of this collection of paintings, porcelain, glass, and maiolica was purchased during this period. In late 80s, Khanenko's finally settled in Ukraine and in a mansion located on Cherchenkivska Street. And they designed the interiors of their mansion to display their collection in the best advantage, and each hall was decorated in particular style. By the time the mansion was built, the collection already had a character of a museum, as you can see on the photos. And Khanenko was a talented traveler. He journeyed all the time his life. He stayed in Vienna, Rome, Berlin, and every Christmas he stayed in Paris. And the highlights of his collection was bought in drawer sale rooms, where he acquired and later resold various works, and we know it from his memories. And he died in 1917, and according to his last will, a public museum containing his collection was to be established in his mansion. In 1919, the Khanenko collection received the status of state museum, but by the decree of and it was nationalized, all the property. And Varvara could not sympathize with the revolution and the new regime, and her dedication to the Kiev and invaluable collection under her care remained unwavering. She categorically refused to leave the city. And also, she declined an offer to relocate the collection to Germany. She stayed in Kiev till the end and took care about the organization of a new museum. It was organized with the help of Georgy Lukonsky, well-known art historian who stayed in Kiev this year, 1919. And thanks to Lukonsky, now I can tell you what is Khanenko's collection or what is not, because he described the collection in Kiev. For example, this little series of 7 manufacturing stayed in Kiev in 1919. And another part of the collection, for example, such as Sugar Bowl, stayed in their apartment in St. Petersburg, and it was it stayed there until 1921, and just the director of the museum, Mykola Makarenko, made everything to take it to Kiev. So it was 2 parts of Khanenko's collection in Kiev and in St. Petersburg. What can I say about the collection of Bogdan Khanenko? He collected all the factories of Europe of 18th century, mostly of 18th century. Now I can say that he was collector of the European porcelain of 19th century. We have just several examples and not too much. From all the collection, I can see he tried to make such a systematically collection of each manufacturer of 18th century in Europe, all the countries. Thanks to Bogdan Khanenko, we have another museum, and it's the building of museum that organized by the efforts of all the industrialists and businessmen. And great contributions to development of this museum were made by Bogdan and Varvara Khanenko, and also Tereshchenko's, Khvoyko, Bilashitsky, Sherbakivsky, Ernst, and others. So this community of industrialists and businessmen organized real museum, the first museum in Kiev. And here you can see the halls of this museum, and Bogdan Khanenko made a significant contribution to this collection by donating the archaeological part to more than 3,000 of volumes of items, and you see it's more than 70,000 rubles. It's amazing. He donated for this museum. And the next collector I want to tell you about, it's a Ukrainian collector, Oskar Gansen. His collection included more than 2,000 paintings, drawings, and decorative arts, especially porcelain and ceramics. His collection suffered the same fate as those I described above, and Gansen initiated the creation of his own museum in 1919, and he received the letter of protection. A special decree was issued by Soviet authorities, nationalizing Gansen collection along with most important collections in Kiev. So as a result, we have the first state museum, this one. The second state museum, it's Khanenko Museum, and this third state museum, it was formerly this collection of Oskar Gansen. Gansen Museum was short-lived. In 1921, the collection transferred in Kiev Art Gallery, and this museum was closed. And later, this collection was distributed among different museums in Kiev. And for example, you can see the showcase and display of the porcelain and ceramics in collection of Oskar Gansen. Such a huge collection was distributed between different museums, and thanks to our colleagues from Kiev Art Gallery, we could say that parts of the collection were transferred in our museum in 1957, in Museum of Western and Oriental Art in Odessa next year, and to other museums. For example, it's possibly that included in Oskar Gansen's collection this series, Parisian series. But I can tell you that I'm sure, because it was a huge collection we received that year. It could be that part of this collection, it's not could be, we know that part of that collection was collection of Oskar Gansen. And Another collector, I have no real photo of the real collector, Anatoly Gudimlevkovich, father of this Anatoly Gudimlevkovich, who was a well-known collector, but also he worked in Kiev Land Bank and was director of Industrial Bank. He was fond of collectioning and was known as an expert of art history. And in 1907, Russian art critic and historian Adrian Prahov published part of the Gudimlevkovich collection of Vienna porcelain in St. Petersburg. You can see it's translated in French. And you can see several pages of this collection. It's just several pages. When Anatoly Gudimlevkovich died in 1905, he left his collection to his son, this guy, who was killed during the Civil War in 1920. And the museum archives are silent about how this coffee service entered the collection. However, it's unlikely that it was a gift of Anatoly Gudimlevkovich the Younger, because we know that nobility were forced to abandon their property and to go from Ukraine to save their lives. So I'm sure this service came from the apartment of Gudimlevkovich, appeared in Kiev Museum Fund, and after from Kiev Museum Fund we have this service from Gudimlevkovich. And I want to tell you about the fate of the collection. I told you about a collection of Razumovsky on the beginning of my speech, and now I want to retell you this story and the fate of his collection. After his granddaughter received the collection, Liudmyla Volkonskaya, we know that their family had a very nice palace in Yagotin. It was burned in 1917 after the revolution, and the part of the collection came to our museum. And the last owner, Igor Rybnin, who fought during the First World War, he left for Paris in 1920. And there he lived with his wife and brother. And he had no anything with in touch with his collection, and they never tried to take it in Paris or in Europe, because it was nationalized, and already part of this collection was, for example, in our museum. This teacup and saucer was among the items transferred from Yagotin to the Khanenko Museum. And it was one of the first arrivings from, because it was recorded by Georgy Lukomsky. 82 paintings, French and of French and Italian artists, and some porcelain, as you can see. And the evacuation of the collection took place back in 1918, and according to the archives of Museum of Art, it was Cora Falcioni, the Rybnin's family's governess, overseeing the transfer to Kiev. And such a story about Rybnin family is really very sad, because they were not rich, and they didn't find their fate in Paris, because Igor Rybnin worked as a guide and his brother as a taxi driver. So you can see it's not everybody will succeed. And this one, this nice box of the middle of 18th century from St. Petersburg, now is in the Kiev Art Gallery. But by this quote, you can see to my sister, Princess Natalia, Her Highness Liudmyla, in the village of I'm sorry. I guess that it could be also from the family of Rubin collection. And the last collectioner I want to tell you about is Alexander Rosenberg. And the story of this collector is different from that all noble families I told you about, like Kravchenko, Khanenko, and others. Alexander was not from the noble family. His grandfather was a poor Jewish salt trader. Over time, the family saved enough money and purchased a glass factory, and that allowed Julian Rosenberg, Alexander's father, to successfully rise in his trading career. And from all the family, only Alexander did not enter the family business and dedicating himself to the career of the law. And also, he was a collector. And it's not surprising that coming from a family of industrialists and dealers, Alexander was a regular guest in the Tereshchenko home. In fact, he was even married to Olga Tereshchenko, niece of Varvara Khanenko. But this marriage lasted only a few years. But they moved from Kiev to Paris together. With Olga Tereshchenko in 1919. And Alexander Rosenberg obtained citizenship, French citizenship in 1926. Before, when he stayed in Kiev and St. Petersburg, he had a huge collection of porcelain. And as I can see, mostly it was European porcelain. For example, you can see this beautiful vase of Vienna factory, also Vienna factory. He had a very nice collection of figures of Meissen porcelain manufacturing. And I have to say that it was really a collection of the quality. And this small part that we have from the Rosenberg really very nice. But we are speaking about the European porcelain. And in 20s, when Rosenberg lived in Paris, he restarted his collectioning career, and he restarted with a Russian and Ukrainian porcelain. I have to admit that at the time, it was no difference, Russian or Ukrainian porcelain. It was territory of Russian, and everything that was from Kiev region or from Ukraine, it was known as a Russian porcelain or ceramics. And his passion for porcelain gave him force to publish several books, and he published a book about it's better here, about the Russian porcelain. And in 1927, he had established regular relations with the Sevres Museum of Sevres, and in 1929 he donated this Sevres plate for this museum. And after his huge collection of Russian porcelain was donated for a museum of Sevres, and most of this collection remain in the museum until nowadays. And Alexander Rosenberg participated in numerous exhibitions showcasing his collection. Here you can see the one in 1928, another one in Sevres in 1929, and later In 1937, it was an exposition devoted to Alexander Pushkin, and also it was illustrated. This photo is from that exposition, Pushkin exposition, illustrated his collection of porcelain. And here I want to show you different photos from his collection that was donated to the Museum of Sèvres. And for example, it's these photos was given by Vivienne Mesquier, and she helped me and to be sure that a part of this collection of Alexander Rosenberg is still in the museum. And here you can see two pieces that was made in Kiev, and now it's in Museum of Sèvres. Now, as I told you this story about Alexander Rosenberg and his collection in Kiev, even in his interview in 20s, he told to journalists that it was he who gave his European porcelain to the museum in Kiev. But I'm not sure that it was real-lived. But still, we have his collection in our museum. And after his donation of Sèvres plate and later his huge collection of Russian porcelain, it looks like he was a very good person. But I want to pick your interest here, and despite his contribution, I cannot call him a saint. It was several scandals around this person, and this fact motivated me to search his biography, and I hope to publish an article or to share more information about this collector in the future conferences. But I will conclude by saying that Alexander Rosenberg's fate was indeed tragic. In 1942, he was arrested by Nazis and killed in Auschwitz in September of that year. And I have shared with you only a few examples of collectors from Kiev, and you can see the issue. Many collectors were dispersed, collections were dispersed after the revolution. And in theory, it might be possible to trace what was looted. And my goal is to establish the provenance of items in our collection that lack documented histories. And also, I plan to continue researching the fates of Kiev emigrants in Paris, of collectors, of art historians, and I already have several persons about whom I want to tell you, and their biography I want to research. On this point, I thank you for your attention.
Merci, merci Liudmyla pour cette formidable intervention, riche en informations tout à fait inédites. Nous avons beaucoup appris donc sur les collections, sur les collectionneurs ukrainiens, et nous irons voir au musée de Sèvres les pièces que vous avez évoquées, on ira le voir avec intérêt. Nous vous souhaitons également bonne chance pour votre thèse. Merci Liudmyla.
Thank you so much, Liudmyla, for this fascinating presentation of Ukrainian collections of porcelain through time and the story of their collectors. We will definitely try and visit some of those pieces at the Museum of Sèvres, and we wish you really best of luck in your upcoming endeavors, and especially in the completion of your thesis at the Museum of Louvre. Thank you.
Merci Liudmyla, merci Joëlle. Bonsoir à tous. Merci de votre attention.